Hey, everybody, welcome to Behind the Headlines. I'm Lee Camp, the most, if at least one of the most, if not the most censored comedian in America. I am joined today by James Fauntleroy from RBN, Revolutionary Blackout News. You know it well, probably. And he has an excellent show on there, and he's a regular contributor as well. We're just going to go through a bunch of the topics that are hitting the nation right now, hitting the world. We're going to dig into them, have some fun, hopefully address some of your comments. If anybody's got questions or comments, we'll be doing that as well. Thanks for being with us. Hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe, do all that good stuff, and let's just have some fun. Hey,
how's it going?
Good. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
You're down in the wonderful leftist utopia of Florida. Is that right?
Oh boy. Yeah, I'm here and near Disney World. Yeah, so it's quite a spectacle to be here in this like tiny little liberal, oasis in a big sea of fascism. You know what I mean? So.
And perhaps we should explain to everyone why you're in, it appears to be like a 8-year-old's bedroom.
Oh man, she is not gonna like that one. But yeah, I'm at an undisclosed location.
Okay.
So so the feds won't find me. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm spending time with family over the weekend. So I was just like, you know what? This is also deeply important. You got some things to talk about. So yeah.
And you're already getting comments on your looks. People are talking about how good you look. So
yeah, well, I mean, I was looking like a bushwhacker a couple of weeks ago because I really was in dire need of a haircut, and so I was just like, I'm tired of looking like I belong in the jungles in the Serengeti. So let me just cut it down, clean it up, and so now I will actually look more fairly presentable. And thank God, because I would have just had you, deplatformed from YouTube just looking the way I looked.
I don't know if you can talk to me about being in need of a haircut. I haven't had one in, I think, 6 years now. So,
but yours look good. Like there's guys who, and whether you wear your hair out long, or I've seen some guys with some beautiful locks that just flowy, and they just have theirs so well kept together. Me.
I don't know, man. You could get some sort of crazy perm, probably.
You know what? Get that soul glow. You know what I'm saying?
Soul glow.
Yeah. Looking like my daddy with a jerry curl. You know what I'm saying? That would be kind of great.
All right. Let's start off by talking about the, I don't know whether it's an impending banking collapse or whether we're, seeing the early signs. We know that the empire will do anything to stave off the inevitable busts of the capitalist boom bust cycle. And so I feel like this thing right now is being held together with duct tape and chewing gum. So what's your take on, so we got Silicon Valley Bank, we got two others that have been, basically collapsed, and now they're finding ways to pay out the rich. And then Credit Suisse as well just got $50 billion injection because they were about to go under.
I would love $50 billion injected into me, however you want to take that, however you want to take it. But why not? Look, why not my grandma? Like, right? Why not, my mama? Why hasn't been $50 million injected into you? Couldn't you use a couple, maybe even 10% of that $50 billion?
Yeah.
Jeez Louise. But yeah.
Yeah. And of course, this is why. So I'm just looking up some of these headlines. This is, of course, while people are struggling across America, it seems the priority of our ruling class is to make sure the bankers and the banks and why I say this is just the rich. Obviously, relatively poor people have their money in banks, but up to $250,000, up to $250,000 is insured. So no one under $250,000 in savings is losing their money, but the rich and the ruling elite are rushing in to firm up all of those above $250,000.
Oh, of course. I mean, Wasn't it Andrew Sorkin that on from CNBC who said that Joe Biden is de facto nationalizing the banks, and even oh
Yeah.
my goodness, O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful, you know, that guy. He, I refer to him as that guy. He was complaining like, "Oh my God, they're nationalizing the banks." I'm like, I wish they actually nationalized the banks. Like, what if we went back to postal banking? I think postal banking was ended in 1963 or 62, something like that. And
Right.
we had
Right.
postal banking, and we weren't at the risk of these megalomaniac gamblers that are actually using our money
Yep.
in order to make more money. And that's something that a lot of people don't realize. And I was talking about this on my channel, on JB Font channel, is that how do banks make money? Well, they take your money in as a deposit. And then once that money's in your possession, they only have to secure a small portion of it. The rest of your money, they'll put it into the market, make it grow, and then whatever profit they get off of your money, then they take that profit and then they put your money back into your account. So basically, they're getting rich off of you. And the thing is that they're
Yep.
putting you at risk every single time. And so by the time you look the other way, you're going to Silicon Valley Bank to take out, money for your rent payment. Next thing you know, it's like, sorry, we ain't got it. And it's like, oh my God, now I'm going to be late on my rent, or I may lose my apartment
Yeah.
because you idiots decided to gamble with my money.
Yeah, what you're explaining there is fractional reserve banking, which is all of these banks. They have roughly 1/10 of what they supposedly have on their books is actually in the bank.
Yeah.
Uh, so if that much. And so they, like you say, they gamble with it. They make themselves rich. It's your money, but they don't really look at it that way. And when you said postal banking, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but yeah, there was a time where, and people have recommended going back to this, where where the post office was also a bank, and you could use it similarly in that, there's one in every city. You could go in, you could open an account, your money wouldn't be gambled with. There wasn't fractional reserve. And then I just also want to add, like, the right-wing media and everything loves to, and of course we have plenty of liberal media, but I'm talking about the right-wing media loves to say, oh, Biden, Fox News, Biden nationalized this, nationalized that. Biden doesn't nationalize shit. All right. Biden and the Democrats are as much capitalist as the fucking right wing is.
Yes.
But the right wing media wants you to believe that, oh, Biden, what a socialist,
Dear God. Look, calling Biden a socialist, that's like going into a pigsty and saying this is a clean room that you can build silicone chips in. Like, really? It's like is that much of a gulf? Like, are you kidding me right now? It's like, tell me you don't know what socialism is, but I'll tell me you don't know what socialism is, right?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think this is do you feel this is a sign of more to come, or is this, are the rich going to shore up the banks and we'll just keep trucking along like everything's fine?
Oh no, I think it's going to be a start of something more catastrophic. Now, by no means am I an economist. I'm terrible at math. I can't even do division correctly. But the thing is that from looking at, because I am this close to 40, so I've seen the financial collapse of 2008. And in 2007, I think was when Citigroup lost $19 billion. And I'm like, well, how in the hell does that happen? And so we're seeing these banks now collapse. Now, of course, when we didn't have this big of an issue when the Glass-Steagall Act was put in place, but then that was repealed, and then we had the Dodd Frank,
Under
which
Clinton.
was a weaker version of the Glass-Steagall, a much weaker version, I should add. And so even that was repealed by Donald Trump, and it just goes to show that there is this there's this mindset of, if we keep the barriers that are in place for making us money, we're going to be more poorer off. And so what they want to do is they want to take those that regulation off so that they can go as sky's the limit. But everybody knows the bigger you are, the harder you fall. The higher you go up, the harder you drop. And so there's no actual stability in place. And that's what they don't want, because they want to bet high and win big. But if you lose, you're going to crash. And not only you crash, but you crash everybody else around you. And so from what I've observed is that, this is always a domino effect. And a lot of people are saying, and especially the corporate media saying, oh, this won't be a domino effect. Always go the opposite of what the corporate media says. And that's one thing that we learned. If you watch Lee Camp, go the opposite way that the corporate media says, because it's going to happen. And so guess what? It already happened to Silicon Valley Bank. It already happened to Signature Bank, by the way, which Barney Frank was on the board of.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, Barney Frank was literally on the board of Signature Bank, and Signature Bank had to collapse.
I want to give
Excuse me.
I want to give Alexander credit for calling me on my bullshit. He says, I don't like that you said right wing and Democrats as if those are two different things. And it is true that sometimes I will make a grand point of saying, look, these are two right-wing parties. And in fact, they're one in the same party. They're both capitalist right-wing parties. It's just that one has a couple of social issues that are a little more left-wing or a little more actually liberal. But I often will, when I'm making a larger point, I often won't stop and dwell on that. And I'll often say right-wing media like Fox News or something like that. So yeah, it is tough to always break down our linguistics as we're going, but
I mean, to add to that point, you're really speaking to somebody who may not be as privy to this information as we are. We tend to be a little bit more, politically adept, not politically adept, but we typically are more in tune with what's going on politically. And we can also see that, some people will say, oh, the left, and we have to correct them, say, no, not the left, liberals, not the left, Democrats are a right-wing party. And people go, well, what do you mean? And then we have to explain to them the Overton window. And so because of that, then they, aren't aware of how it is, because a lot of people are apolitical. They just don't realize what's going on. They know the problems, what's going on, but they don't really know the intricacies and the ins and outs of how the sausage is made. And unfortunately, you and I have seen how the sausage is made, and we're like, don't look at it, just listen to us. So that's how it basically is.
Yeah. I mean, I make the point as much as anyone that the two parties that own our system are two very right-wing, pro-capitalist, pro-extraction, pro-environmental destruction parties, and much of the farthest right-wing policies are often put forward under Democrats because it's easier to get it passed under Democrats than it is under Republicans. So you look at, you look at things like the environmental destruction, where Obama was bragging about laying more oil pipeline and extracting more oil than any president before him. The incredible prosecution of whistleblowers that was done under Obama, and then many of these things continue to ramp up. The Obama dropped more bombs than ever before, but of course Trump then dropped more. So these things are ramped up under Democrats, and then Republicans continue them. But
well, look at Title 42. Joe Biden wants to keep Title 42 in place, and also he still has kids in cages, and nobody ever wants to talk about that. Like, my thing is like, with Trump, that energy you had with Trump, keep that same energy that you have with Joe Biden. Why are you letting up? Right? And the thing is that they go by the rhetoric. And so a lot of times, like, for instance, there was this lady that went viral. I think she did on TikTok, and I love how, shout out to Due Dissidents. They said the liberal lady with the crazy eyes. And one of the things that they brought out was that she's talking about, oh, Joe Biden is the most accomplished president. It's like, accomplishment for who, though? That's the question a lot of people need to ask. What did he accomplish for whom? Did he accomplish for workers? Because we all know that's not the case. I mean, just ask real workers, right? Or was it for the what I love to call the corporate dictators, right? Or like Bernie Sanders likes to call it the billionaire class. You know, he calls them that. But the thing is that it's the ultra rich and it's the oligarchs or the corporate dictators are the ones who really have made out like bandits, and they continuously make out like bandits because, like I always said, Donald Trump is just Joe Biden in orange face. That's it. And so when people look at it like that through that lens, then you start to realize and start to look not just at the rhetoric, but what they do line by line. You come to find out that there is just one unipolar party. And are you familiar with Yum Brands?
Like Jungian?
Yum, Y-U-M, Yum Brands.
Oh, were they the
Okay.
ones that own like Taco Bell and everything?
Yes. Okay. So Yum Brands is kind of under the umbrella of PepsiCo, but Yum Brands owns places like Taco Bell,
Yeah.
Pizza Hut. Let's just go with those two, Taco Bell and Pizza Hut, right? Have you ever
All
seen
the
those?
they're I saw a study. They're actually responsible for something like 75% of the world's diarrhea.
Makes sense. So, you know, so if you look at, have you seen those restaurants where it's kind of half like
Right.
they also own Pizza Hut, so it's like half Pizza Hut, half KFC, right?
Yeah.
And I use this example of this is our political system. You go into one of those half and half Pizza Huts and KFCs, and then you order from the Pizza Hut side, but then you don't like how they treat you. So you go to the other side of the counter and go to the KFC side without realizing that the person who owns the entire restaurant is basically employing the two people on either the Pizza Hut side or the KFC side. So why in the world would you complain about Republicans when you're simply giving the same money to the bosses of the Republicans are the same bosses of the Democrats? It doesn't make sense. Leave the store. Get out. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200.
There's a lady selling mangoes on the sidewalk who will treat you right.
Named Jill Stein. That's the lady selling mangoes on the sidewalk that'll actually give you something that'll actually help you within your body. Or you can just go to the other shop down the street. They may not be doing something inside, they may be outside, but at least they're actually giving you something that'll be tangible for you instead of giving the money all to the owner who doesn't give a shit about you. That's the thing that people need to realize. And a lot of people are mad at me, Sabby, Nick, CJ, and Rome at RBN for saying that you guys need to just leave both these parties and either do a third party independent or outside strategy or all three combined so that we can actually get something more tangible for working people and poor people. But a lot of people, unfortunately, they are, dare I say, their gravy train is complicit on supporting Democrats, even if they are progressive. So
yeah, and I do love that analogy with the two fast food restaurants, and then you yell at one side, "You've lost my business," and then you go to the other, and it's the same manager. But then also what people tend to do is then they get the food from the KFC side, and they're like, this chicken's overcooked. I'm not really into this. You know what? I'm going back to the Taco Bell side, and then they go over there, and they're like, things will change now. And it's like,
yeah,
dude, it's the same entity.
yeah. Yeah, and so I think that people need to realize is that, there was this pyramid. It was a pyramid. It was kind of like a hierarchy, and this was shared to me by Savvy Sabs, and it was a hierarchy of basically who really runs the world. And at the top, you have the central bankers, right? Below them, you have the corporate banks, but then right in the middle managers are politicians, the president, Congress, people like that. So really, when we talk about wanting to change out the president or something like that, you're really just talking about changing out a middle manager. You're not talking about actually basically crushing the snake's head as the top. So what really needs to happen is a combination of many factors that cause a a catastrophic failure of this corporate dictatorship. And so I think that, one of the reasons why I'm so excited about Shama Sawant's Worker Strike Back is that it's giving more power to workers instead of trying to focus on some random Democrat trying to primary Joe Biden. Why don't we focus on the workers that actually are the people at the bottom? And then if there are people standing on your back, all you need to do is stand up and they won't be standing on your back anymore. And that's why I think, that's why I try to push out more worker-centered organizations like that.
Yeah, I actually, you're getting to my next question, which is, you and I and pretty much anybody doing commentary online spends
Sure.
a fair amount of time, some percentage of time, talking about the electoral politics, and
Of course.
I mean specifically the mainly federal and top electoral politics.
Mhm.
I try and keep it to a minimum, 10 or 15% of my discussion. And that's because I don't actually think that in the larger sense, our electoral system responds to the people. So, yes, I think everyone should vote because the corporate class would love nothing more than for everyone to not vote. But I
Mm.
think it should be a tiny percentage of people's action, of their effort to change the society, to make a sustainable world, to make a world
Mhm.
that works for them and their
Mhm.
friends and family and neighbors.
Mhm.
And so I think that if we spend 75% of our time just talking about these federal electoral issues or races, then they've kind of already won in a way.
Mhm.
And I want to get your thoughts on that, although you kind of just addressed it a little.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Focusing 75% of our time on it is sexy, right?
Gets clicks.
That it gets clicks. But, talking about different actions or donating to mutual aid, or like for instance at RBN, Rome is building a library as we speak, for the people. And then, of course, you have CJ. I think he's going to be doing a speech for, I think it's Workers Strike Back. I'm not sure. But he's going to an organization there. He's going to be doing a speech, soon. And then I know Nick has done a speech at Worker Strike Back in Seattle. Sabby went to Worker Strike Back launch in Boston. And I'm trying to, join some mutual aid organizations here. And I just go back to what Kwame Ture said about all the greatest revolutionaries that we look up to have all been parts of organizations in order to change the system. Now, the thing is that some of the most successful ones were the ones that were targeted by our state. And if you're being targeted by the state, then that means you're actually having an effect.
Yeah,
And
you guys used to be called Fred Hampton leftists.
yeah, and so, the thing is that we see it as you have to benefit the people first and build up the people, because there's no use into trying to build up a roof if you don't have a foundation, and the foundation being the people. And it's really helping people with their material needs, but also education, because people have to know what's really going on in order for them to fight against the system. You have to know your enemy. And a lot of this political system, the capitalist political system, is really an enemy of the people, because it really only serves a small minority of people. We literally live in minority rule. It's just a lot of people make you think that we don't. And they'll keep telling you, oh no, you guys have the voice, you guys have the power. And it's like, but really, do we though? I think it was a Cambridge study that showed how really the people, when it comes to what we want as far as policies, it does not get listened to. But the higher on the economic ladder you are, the more of an ear you get from our, elected officials. And
If
so
we're
that needs to be flipped, right?
if we're thinking of the same study, it was a Princeton study. Yeah.
Princeton, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of those Ivy League schools. I don't know. I never went to one. So
No, it's one of my favorite studies because they looked at, because to me I mean, I'd always been, for years, I'd been critical of the two-party system as being, meaningless back and forth between two capitalist goons.
Yeah.
Uh, but to me, it solidified my understanding of how this system worked because they'd done it
Hmm.
basically scientifically. They had looked at 1,779 different policy issues. I mean, who even knew there were that many? And they
Wow.
found that the people, if they want something that doesn't align with corporate interests, have a near 0% chance of ever getting it through Congress, meaning our
Absolutely.
government doesn't do a tiny percentage of what the American people want. They do zero of what the American people want
Yeah.
unless, and there are occasionally times where the people have been either propagandized or for other reasons get what they want because it aligned with corporate interests. That does happen sometimes if you're
Hmm.
talking about percentages of Americans.
Hmm.
But in terms of going against corporate interests, never, never once.
No, because you don't go up against the boss, right? You just don't. And it's like it's suicide to go up against the boss because if they own the voice, right, which is our media, they own that. Then they also own the police, which means you could be putting your own physical life in danger. So there's a lot of fear, and a lot of times they listen to them out of duress instead of actually listening to the people. And the thing is that I don't know. I might get a little bit of pushback here, but the politicians have to be more scared of the people than they have to be scared of the oligarchs.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not scared of us, it's because they defanged and declawed us over the years. And a lot of times it's because we are so poor or we are so overworked that we don't even have the energy, the wherewithal, the bandwidth to actually pay attention to what's going on. And some people go, oh, well, people are just so busy watching the Kardashians. They're only watching the Kardashians because that's the only mindless shit that they can actually pay attention to because they're tired of working so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you really can't put the blame on the people. You just have to kind of get their attention a little bit harder and tell them, hey, wake up. They're literally doing this to you. But at the same time, what are you doing to help energize them so that they have a little bit more energy within themselves to actually fight against the system? Because the system is extracting so much out of people to the point where they're like, I have no energy to organize. I have no energy to actually think about these things. I have my kids to take care of.
Right.
And so this is where mutual aid comes in. This is why it's so important. And a lot of people who are part of like what we like to call the PMC, the professional managerial class, some of them can be class traders and some of them can help to, aid the mutual aid organizations so that we can get more people to come in and fight against the system. But we also need a solidarity among all workers. The thing is, some of the workers who make a little bit more, you guys have to have solidarity with those of us who are poor and in a destitute position.
Including workers in gasp other countries. What? We can't align with other countries? Dirty Mexicans? No way.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should be united. Those of us who are not a tiny, tiny percentage that is the ruling elite should be united internationally,
I agree.
nationally, etc., and
Hmm.
fight back that way because
Yeah.
all these battles they either are about class or they have a class element to all of them.
Well, I mean, look, why aren't we taking notes from the French right now?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
as someone who's in media as well as entertainment and comedy, I know you've heard your share of so many jokes about the French, about how they're weak and they're passe and they don't really fight. Look at what's going on in France right now. They are literally burning shit down because Macron decided, oh, we're going to go through this policy without actually the voice of the people. And so the people said, I bet, let's go. And next thing you know, Paris is burning.
Yep. And they've really done a lot of great inventive protests. I'm a big fan of, protesting in new and creative ways and
Hmm.
throwing a wrench in the gears, so to speak. And one of the things they did, which I loved, is they cut off gas workers cut off fuel to like rich areas of town and gave free fuel to like libraries and schools and things.
It's just, it's just, you got to do this, man. Because the thing is that this is the power that people have. And my question to people who are watching as your viewers, look, we can organize. Look, some of you guys work for the power plants. Some of you guys work on the docks. Some of you guys may be drivers. Some of you guys work in security. And I'm not saying anything nefarious. I'm just saying some of you guys can be like, you know what? Yeah, I'm calling out sick for the day.
You're talking about the Fight Club speech. We work in your kitchens. We take out your garbage. We care for your kids.
Yes. Yes, Lee got it before I even could say anything. Oh, thank God for Lee. Look, have you guys liked the stream, by the way? Make sure to like the stream and make sure to subscribe because Lee Camp is a father and a husband, and he's doing some very hard work. Lee Camp has 10 kids, and let me tell you, he has to pay for
10.
all 10 kids right now. He's trying to send them to college in the United States. Do you know how expensive that is? Help Lee out. Subscribe.
Yeah, absolutely right. 10 kids. They all have rickets, so we're trying to deal with that. But,
yeah. They live in the Imperial Core. So.
Yeah. But you're absolutely right. Workers do have to fight back in a big way. And speaking of how much Americans are struggling right now, they just recently cut at least a portion of SNAP benefits to people. And these numbers are still mind-blowing to me. 47 million Americans are getting some sort of food stamp assistance in this country. And, that is a huge percentage. That's higher than 1/10. That's like 1/8 or something of the American population. It's just, does this feel like the richest country in the world to you?
No, because I literally am a food stamp recipient. I get SNAP benefits.
Yeah.
Yes. Not everybody you see on your screen is rich and affluent, that has a show. And so for me, this risk, okay, just a little bit of personal info. They approved me when I recertified for food stamps. They approved me for $60. Whoopity-doo, $60, right?
Is that a month or a week? Or
a month.
A month.
And then they said, oh, well, since you guys are getting the cost of living adjustment through Social Security disability, we're going to chop that in half. Now you're getting $30 a month in food stamps. How about that?
That's what they just did. Right?
Yes. So now I only get $30 a month in food stamps because apparently the money that I get from disability is too much. And I'm struggling. I literally have a GoFundMe on my Twitter just so that I can help with payments, right? Just so I can help with, my income because they raised my rent $250 last year and for 1 year. And in the year before, another $100. And so I can't afford to live really. And my mother also lives with me, you know what I mean? And I'm taking care of a homeless family member that's sleeping, on my living room floor. So the thing is that this is not the richest country in the world when it comes to perspective of people like myself, when it comes to homeless people out there. And by the way, a huge chunk of homeless people were kids that were kicked out of their house because their parents realized that they were queer and now they have to live out on the streets. Wow. And so you have to realize that there's so many people and look, let's go not the opposite direction, but let's go into a different realm. What about all those poor people in Appalachia right now that have been promised time and time again by the Republican Party that they're going to be doing for themselves when in reality, they're not doing a damn thing for them, right? Let's talk about the people who are in Skid Row, like CJ and RBN. He's out there in LA and he actually took Rome out there to Skid Row to help, feed and clothe people. And they are out there. And the funny thing, people will say, well, they have mental disabilities and they have drug use. And I'm like, so this is how we're going to treat our people with mental
Right.
illnesses? Is this how we're going to treat people who have drug issues? We're not going to treat it like it's a medical, mental and medical issue. We're going to treat it like it's just you just made this choice. And I'm currently reading on my channel right now the book called Laziness Does Not Exist. And one of the tenets about it, and I'm just getting into the introduction in chapter 1, it talks about a lot of times when people, and this goes into the whole bootstrap narrative, but when people talk about laziness, really, why are people feeling unmotivated and they are apathetic and they don't want to do anything? Well, really, could it also be that um, there's a mental depression that happens to people? Which also affects you physiologically, which drains your energy, so you don't have any motivation to do anything. Could that also be? And why is it? Why are people feeling that way? What is the system that is exacerbating these types of feelings, both mentally, emotionally, and physically? And so this goes up to the whole bootstrap narrative, where people say, oh, pick yourselves up by your bootstraps. But really, that was just a joke at the time to say that you can't lift yourself up by your own shoelaces. I want anybody who's watching to put their shoes on and then try to lift their body off the ground by their own shoelaces. You can't do it. And this is the whole bootstrap thing. And when people seriously use it as a rallying cry to get themselves up off the ground, the joke was made of the impossibility to do it. Really, it's so individualist that you make yourself out to be, oh, well, I can just do it all by myself. You weren't born by yourself. You drove on roads that are paid through by tax dollars. You were born using, and especially people who live in many socially democratic countries that have universal health care, who pay for that health care to help you be born, who help feed you. The thing is that everything, our entire existence as humans, is off of collectivism.
Yeah.
And so when we drift away from that collectivist mindset, we are literally dooming ourselves to destruction. And the thing is that that's what capitalism does. It makes it so that, oh, you need to be an island by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? If you do that, you're dooming yourself to more failure and destruction. And the thing is that really these billionaires they are perverting collectivism because they're exploiting all of us collectively in order to prop themselves up. When in reality, we need to take that and say, no, we're going to build all ourselves up equally.
Yeah, very well said. And everything that is gained in this society is done with the help of, in the best case scenario, with the help of thousands upon thousands of people, not including people who lived before you and came up with ideas that are now used by you and others. But in worst case scenario, it's done on the backs of thousands and thousands of others. Your Apple iPhone that everyone says, oh, Steve Jobs or whoever, anyone at Apple, they're billionaires. The CEOs are billionaires because of the amazing work they do. Well, it's like you've got poor people putting together the phones. You've got children lowered down into mines in Africa mining the rare earth metals. You got thousands of workers that their ideas and their efforts internally in the company were put together, were pooled to even create the idea of the iPhone and how it works. So all of that, even if you're one of these people that's like, oh, Steve Jobs was a genius. Steve Jobs was standing on top of millions of people in order to achieve these things that we all like to use. And so the idea that someone he became a billionaire on his own, fucking no, he didn't. No, he didn't.
No. Y'all need to listen to Lee. Lee's speaking facts right now. Because the thing is that, like, for instance, you look at a lot of these billionaires, a lot of them, their parents had money and then they gave them like $250,000 to start. I'm like, who in the world has a parent with $250,000 to help them start?
Yep.
That comes from what we call generational wealth. Something that somebody like me has no idea about. And the thing is that when you were talking about, it's so poignant because a lot of times we talk about how people got their generational wealth. Like, look, for instance, how did Wells Fargo help get their generational wealth? Slavery. How did Aetna help get their generational wealth? Slavery. So the thing is that we also have to come in and look at this from a perspective of, well, how did we get to where we are? Well, it wasn't off the backs of the free labor of people that you guys got from Africa, and then you guys sprinkled all these people up from, from the North America all the way down to Brazil. And so you use their free labor in order to build your wealth. And so the thing is that we're not only doing that here, we're doing it abroad. It's alleged that Rihanna and her Fenty company is actually using, Indian children in her mica mines in order to mine for her makeup products. So the thing is that every single billionaire thrives off of exploitation, really, as just the norm. And you will never meet a billionaire that has made it not through exploitation.
Right.
Because that's how you have to do it. That's how you accumulate so much wealth. Right.
And yeah, I'm glad you bring up how much of America was obviously built on slavery. And what I bring up race as an issue in a lot of these topics. And one of the points I make is it's not always that every topic in American discourse is 100% based on race issues. But race is involved in just about every single. So, if American healthcare sucks, it sucks even more depending on racial disparities and things like that. So it's like everything that kind of sucks in America sucks even more if you're, in the Black community or Hispanic or whatnot. I know, since we're talking about healthcare, I know that you have some health issues. So I don't know if you want to talk about the American healthcare system and how awesome it's functioning.
It's amazing, Lee. Can't you believe it? Oh my goodness. The infant mortality rate among Black babies are 3 times higher than those of white babies in the United States. Isn't it great?
Yep. And during COVID, they were saying that the percentage of people dying in the Black community was higher. And there's multiple reasons for that. One is the general distrust of, white America jabbing something into you is probably higher amongst Black community. But then another thing is in studies, they've shown that, Black people are less likely to ask more questions of their doctor because some of them believe that the doctor knows best and that's just how it is. And so I'm not going to ask why things are going wrong. A great example of this, even though she's rich and powerful, is Serena Williams says she almost died after giving birth because she said there was something wrong after giving birth. And the doctor said, no, you're fine. You're fine. You're fine. And she ultimately had to basically scream at them and insist. And they found, I think it was blood clots. And it's like, even if you are rich and powerful, a Black woman is being ignored in a hospital,
Well, let's go this route. And here's something that a lot of people don't realize. In the United States, in the field of psychology, psychologists, they study the people when it comes to having the basis of it was always on white people. They didn't study Black people. And so therefore, a lot of it is based on Eurocentric narratives on psychology, when in reality, they didn't really ever study us. And so a lot of times what they also don't consider is the racial and the racial aspect of how we've been treated in this country. And some of us may be suffering from some of these debilitating mental illnesses, partially because of how we've been mistreated in this country. And people don't want to talk about that. And then they'll say, I'm going to write you a prescription for this. Let's go even deeper than that. Some of us are having some of the illnesses that we are dealing with partially because they've been exacerbated by a capitalist system that we have been dealing with. I'm not saying that, we don't actually have different chemical imbalances, things like that need to be treated. No, we absolutely do. But some of this is also exacerbated. Sometimes your depression is exacerbated by your economic and financial situation that you're living in. Maybe that you're housing insecure. Maybe you started taking drugs as a means to self-medicate because of the things that are happening within your family and your community that may be due to health, maybe due to the carceral system, maybe due to your country sending your family members abroad in order to extract resources out of another country for the sake of the billionaires. That's the thing that a lot of people don't talk about. And so, really, ending this system that we have will also be good for our mental health on top of it too, because then we can start rebuilding from the bottom up, including our, our healthcare system, including our mental health care. I think that's something that a lot of people don't really talk about. And really, my ancestors were brought here as free labor, basically so that they can extract as much resources as they can in order to build themselves up. And then because race is a colonial construct. Once they decided, to release us from prison, I'm sorry, from slavery, but that's a whole thing. 13th Amendment still allows for slavery, but that's a whole other thing. But
Right.
yeah, but the thing is that they still conducted slavery in many ways. You have wage slavery and things like that. So
Yeah.
ultimately, the whole race aspect was brought on because they wanted to hold on to power. And so ultimately, man, we had to get rid of this system of exploitation because it hurts everybody of all walks of life, no matter who you are.
Yeah. Speaking of wage slavery, it's always a complicated conversation, part of the conversation, because on one hand, I'm like, I want workers to be treated better. I want everybody to be employed who wants to be, and so they can fund their lives and things like that. And then
Mhm.
also, after that, we should also not have this system at all of wage slavery. it's
Well,
it's a
yeah.
confusing thing to talk about. I want everybody to have a job, but also really nobody should have a job they don't fucking enjoy. Like,
Well, I mean, uh, you could put that to the automation aspect. If we really had a more just, egalitarian, and equitable and equal system, then even when automation happens, then we will be overjoyed because that means that will be
yep.
jobs that we don't want to do that gets to be done by machines, and then we could just have more time devoted to doing the things that actually help us to live and thrive. And then we wouldn't have to worry about housing insecurity because if we have a system that's a housing first system, meaning that nobody should go homeless at all, then guess what? These are some of the things that will be a huge dark cloud over us that's lifted that we wouldn't have to worry about. Imagine right now knowing that you will never be homeless ever again and you can't be homeless. Just imagine how that would feel within your own heart
Right.
to feel that, or to feel that you will always have healthcare and your healthcare will never be at a different level than someone who makes more money, right? Because even I think it was NYU in their School of Medicine, they were so the people who are part of their board of trustees, they get more preferential treatment in their emergency departments than people who are off the street. And then people who are off the street, they get them sent to other hospitals that are more known for taking in more poor and less affluent people. So that's the problem with our healthcare system. That's the problem with our housing system. Never forget that Vanguard and BlackRock are buying up all the private housing in the country and making us into a nation of renters. So,
Vanguard and
yeah.
BlackRock, for those who don't know, are the two largest private equity firms on the planet. Many call them shadow banks, and BlackRock is far bigger than any U.S. bank. It is, if you look in just about any major industry, big oil, big banks, media. If you look in the top 3 to 5 shareholders, BlackRock and Vanguard are in there.
Wow. Yeah, I know they're part owners of Disney.
Yep.
Yeah, they're that big.
Yep. The part owners like top 3, I think, part owners. Uh,
Hmm.
what were you
Yeah.
mentioning? Oh yeah, imagine how it would feel to never have to worry about having housing, even if it's not a mansion, just having some kind of housing. We live in the United States where there are millions without home, millions the housing insecure, even if they have a place at the moment, they're behind on rent, etc. Tens of millions that are housing insecure. And we have
Hmm.
17 million empty houses across the country. And of course, that number goes up every day because it has just come away for the wealthy to own multiple places, and they view it as an investment. They don't even live there. They just buy a house and sit on it. And 17 million empty houses. Meanwhile, 1 million homeless. We could give every homeless person 17 houses.
But here's the thing, Lee. So you just said it, a couple minutes ago, and you had to give a caveat. You had to give a disclaimer. We're not talking about giving everybody mansions. But here's the problem. Why did you even have to put that caveat there in the first place? Like, what is so wrong? What's so wrong about everyone having housing? Like, and if you ask somebody that, well, they didn't work for it. Neither did landlords. I'm sorry. You have a landlord.
They did most of these fucks.
Yeah, they didn't. Like, if you want to give that to maybe the people who were involved in the construction company that had a hand in building that house, who put up the drywall, who put up the electrical, who put up the plumbing, then okay, yeah, then let that construction company own the house and then sell it to somebody, right? But if you're talking about people not having housing because they didn't pull themselves up by the bootstraps, like, housing should be a human right, because without housing, you die. And if you see people out there on the streets, look, their health is worse. Their health physically and emotionally are worse. And they have a lot to deal with. And this is actually goes back to the book where I was reading about laziness does not exist. Talking about how people who are homeless, they literally have to work every single day just to survive. So.
Yeah. And, this is part of the U.S. hatred towards and ongoing belligerence towards Cuba and Venezuela and several other countries, is that housing is guaranteed. This isn't saying, and sorry to give another caveat, this isn't saying everything in Cuba is always perfect. That's not the point.
Of course.
The point is there is guaranteed housing in Cuba. There is guaranteed employment in Cuba. There is guaranteed education in Cuba, free education. There's guaranteed healthcare in Cuba. So the real reason that the U.S. has this 60, 70 year visceral hatred of Cuba is not because the people are harmed and we're trying to help them. It's literally the opposite. It's because the people are doing well on their own, despite the economic war against Cuba. And they don't have to worry about all these things. And it is the threat of the good example. If Americans realize that it's really not that big a deal for a rich country to give everyone housing, healthcare, and education, then the people would be fucking furious to realize we're living this way.
And Lee, let me say this. Anybody that's watching that's a liberal or somebody who loves the Democratic Party, don't you come into the comments saying, but Cuba and LGBTQ. No, because last year they did the family code laws in Cuba, and they actually ratified these family code laws for enabling and give solidarity to people who are queer in their community. Back in articles back in 2009, they made gender affirming surgery in Cuba legal, and they give it throughout for free to all their Cuban citizens who are trans. So guess what? Trans people actually have more rights in Cuba than they do in the United States. You can be gay and adopt, and it was voted on. It wasn't just passed. Like, gay marriage, here in the United States was never voted on in this country. I'm a queer guy. Trust me, I know. Gay marriage was not voted on. It was passed through the Supreme Court. In Cuba, they actually voted on it, and the majority of Cubans agreed with it. So therefore, it was done democratically there, and they actually give you more rights as a queer person than you do here in the United States. How does that feel? Because they're literally trying to get rid of trans people in different states in this country, let alone you as a trans person have to raise money just to get gender affirming care in this country through crowdfunding, which is a complete crack of bullshit in my opinion. You shouldn't have to do that. But yet in Cuba, you can. So when people want to come into the comments saying, oh, but Cuba, when it comes to LGBTQ people, blah, 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 blah. No. Because they actually proved you wrong already time and time again back then.
Well, yeah, that's the bullshit.
Not you, but I mean,
that's the bullshit propaganda that the U.S. has to push. Is they can't really point to Cuba and say, that oh well, it's because they're going to war with Haiti. It's like, no, there's nothing wrong with them, so they have to make up shit. It's acoustic sound weapons that they're firing at our diplomats. They have to make up shit because otherwise
Spy
people would
balloons. The
never
spy balloons.
They're sending balloons over us.
The balloon, Basti balloon.
Yeah, we literally spent $2 million of missiles to shoot down one $12 hobbyist balloon.
Wait, how much?
I love that people. What?
How much?
Oh, the hobby balloon that they shot down cost $12.
No. How much money did they spend? They spent
$2 million.
millions.
$2 million.
I need to go, Lee. I need to leave. I need to leave, bro.
Yeah. Several Sidewinder missiles took out a hobby balloon.
God. Look, that's like the joke. I forgot the comedian's name. He said we spent $12 million on a pen that can write in space, and the Russians said, "Why not just use a pencil?"
Yeah.
Why do we still live here, Kelly? I'm trying to wonder, why haven't we moved? Look. Let's you and me get together with your family. We'll jump on a boat. Look, we'll be refugees. We'll go to Cuba.
We'll jump on a raft, land on the Cuban shore, say we're refugees. No, have you noticed that whenever Americans leave the United States, we're not called refugees. We're called like expats or something like that, because refugees, the term is only used for people that come to the United States. If you flee the United States, you're not a refugee, even though you're fleeing the empire.
Yeah. It's funny because there was actually, I think it was an article came out about this, that a huge chunk of Cuban immigrants that live especially in South Florida, once they become elderly, they actually want to move back to Cuba because they know that they have guaranteed housing and healthcare.
There you go.
Ironic.
Sweary has a good idea. Crowd-funded mass exodus. There we go.
Hey, bestie, that's my Sweary Fairy. Good to see you.
All right, man. That was a quick hour. That was an easy hour.
Yeah. Uh-oh. Lee?
that was hilarious because it was like as I'm doing the wrap up, so I'm like, all right, that's a click.
Oh, I was like, wait a minute, is this my show now? Yeah, I'm taking over Lee Camp's show.
You own it now. Three more hours. No, that was an easy hour, and I really great talking to you. I wish we could talk about 42 other topics, but we'll have to do it again soon. How can everybody follow all your work?
So I'm on Twitter at JBFont. You can also go to my show by the same name, the JBFont channel. You guys can just type in JBFont on YouTube. You guys can go there. I'm also part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You guys can follow us on Twitter at Rev Black Network on Twitter, and you can just type in Revolutionary Blackout Network on YouTube. We're also there at Revolutionary Blackout Network. And yeah, just give me a follow, say what's up, say hi. I don't bite. Well, depending on who you think. Never mind. I don't bite. So yeah. Yes, at JB Font. Yeah. So
just featuring some on the screen there so people can see it and follow it.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks again, man, for taking the time and such a wonderful conversation. And I wish you all good things.
Yeah. And by the way, Lee, I just want to, number one, thank you very much for having me on. It was a huge privilege to have you on. And I also want to say that I respect your opinion and the work that you've been doing. You've been doing such a good job. You and your wife have been doing an amazing job at telling people about how the power that we have and what we need to do in order to, push back against this corporate dictatorship. And I just want to thank you for all the work that you and your wife have been doing. And yeah, it's just I have a lot of respect and admiration for you and your wife for what you guys are doing out there. And it's a tough job, especially dealing with what the Imperial Court has been doing to you through the corporations, through like PayPal and through YouTube and all these different platforms. And you keep trudging along, and your resiliency is also a huge inspiration to me. So thank you.
Oh man, that's truly fucking cool to hear, and from someone I also respect. So Yeah. Thanks a lot. Just thanks. That's really cool to hear.
Mhm.
Yeah. So let's chat again soon, and
All right.
keep up the fight.
Thank you so much. Bye.
All right, folks. Thank you so much. That was a fun hour. Really appreciate everybody being here. I do these interviews regularly, roughly 2 a week, and they're at youtube.com/behind the headlines. I hope you'll hit subscribe over there. But most importantly, we are completely independently funded, Behind the Headlines, which is a Mint Press project. And so you can join us. You can make sure this keeps going at patreon.com/behind the headlines. Please become a member there. You'll immediately get some cool perks, such as the blooper reels from Most Censored News that are only available there, and much more. So please do that, and I will see you soon. Keep fighting.